My mother served my sister the first slice of pie. She always did. I watched from my seat at the far end of the dining room table, the one near the kitchen door, the one that had been mine since I was 7 years old, and had quietly decided I preferred being near an exit. Thanksgiving hadn't changed. The linen tablecloth with the small wine stains nobody had ever replaced. The ceramic turkey centerpiece my grandmother bought at a craft fair in 1987. My sister's voice, bright and effortless, filling every corner of the room. "And I'm thinking sage green for the nursery," my sister was saying, one hand resting on her belly, the other wrapped around a glass of sparkling cider. Her fiancé, Tanner, was leaning toward my father with that easy grin of his, the one that said money without ever having to mention it. Very earthy, very calm. "Oh, that's precious," my mother said, pressing her hand to her chest. "Sage green. Iris, isn't that precious?" I looked up, I said. "Really nice." My mother held my gaze for half a second, the familiar small apology moving through her eyes, and then she turned back to my sister. I took a sip of water and let them talk. Growing up, I learned early that there were two kinds of children in our house. There was my sister, who arrived in every room like a weather event. Loud, bright, impossible to ignore. And then there was me. The one you forgot was there until you needed something found, fixed, or figured out. She was 3 years younger than me. By the time she could talk, she was already the charming one. It calcified fast, the way those things do in families. She became the daughter they bragged about. I became the daughter they didn't have to worry about, which really just meant the daughter they didn't think about much at all. My sister made the varsity cheerleading squad her freshman year. My father went to every game. I joined the robotics club that same year, and we went to regionals and placed second in the state. My parents sent flowers to the school. My father didn't come. "Hard to get time off," he said. My mother said she'd been meaning to learn more about robotics. She never did. When my sister turned 16, my parents threw her a party at the VFW hall downtown. 40 people, a DJ, a custom cake with her face on it. When I turned 16, 3 years later, we had dinner at Applebee's, just the 4 of us. My dad said, "We'll do something bigger next year." We never did. I knew they loved me. I knew it the way you know the sun is real when it's been cloudy for a month, abstractly, distantly, with faith instead of evidence. They fed me, sheltered me, showed up to things when it was easy. But they never once tried to understand me. They didn't know what I was doing on my computer for hours every night. They didn't know I had taught myself to code at 13 using library books and YouTube tutorials. They didn't ask. When I was 17, I built a website for my dad's hardware store. He'd been doing everything on paper for 30 years. I digitized his inventory, set up a simple ordering system, made it so he could track what was selling and what wasn't. I spent 2 weekends on it. When I showed him, he looked at the screen for maybe 30 seconds and said, "That's real nice, Iris. Very neat." Then he asked me to help him carry a box of storm drains to the truck. He never opened the website again. I learned to expect that. I got a full scholarship to a state university for computer science. My parents were politely impressed and a little confused. "You always been good with gadgets," my dad said. "Smart kid." My sister, 3 years behind me, was headed to a school 2 towns over on a partial scholarship my parents had quietly supplemented. They threw her a going-away party. A real one, with a banner and a catered spread. When I left for college, my mother hugged me at the car and said, "Be safe, call us." In college, I was finally in my element. There were other people like me, people who thought in systems and problems and solutions. My junior year, 4 of us started working on an idea: smart grid management software. The kind of program that could help utility companies actually manage power loads, reduce waste, prevent outages. It was technical and slow, and I loved every single minute of it. Senior year, we entered a national clean energy competition. We won. The prize was $50,000 in seed money and a meeting with a VC firm in Austin. I called home from the parking lot of the competition venue, my hands shaking. "Mom," I said, "we won the competition. We got $50,000 in a meeting in Austin." There was a pause, the TV in the background. "Oh, that's wonderful, honey," she said. "Listen, can I call you back? Tanner just proposed to your sister and we're all at dinner and she's, well, you can imagine." "Yeah," I said, "call me back." She texted the next afternoon. "Congratulations, honey, so proud." 2 exclamation points, a star emoji. I put my phone face down on the desk and went back to work. I moved to Austin at 23. My company was called ClearGrid. 5 employees, secondhand chairs, exactly enough runway to last 8 months if nobody made a mistake. I ate a lot of rice and beans. I slept 6 hours a night. I wore the same rotation of 4 shirts and didn't think once about it. My parents visited once, my second year there. I picked them up from the airport in my 5-year-old Civic with the cracked dashboard. My mother looked at my apartment, the 1-bedroom with the folding table I used as a desk, the couch from Facebook Marketplace, the bare walls, and she said, "Iris, honey, this is very spare." "I like it," I said. My father looked out the window at the street below. "Is this neighborhood safe?" "It's fine, Dad. I chose it because it's close to the office." My mother patted my arm. "We just want you settled. We want you to have a life. This startup thing, isn't it exhausting? Wouldn't you rather work somewhere with a real salary, benefits?" "I have equity," I said. "What's equity?" my father asked. I didn't explain, I changed the subject. They stayed 2 nights. We talked about my sister's wedding plans for most of it. At 25, ClearGrid closed our first real venture round, $3 million. I remember sitting in the conference room after the papers were signed, looking at my team, Nate, across from me, the other engineers, all of us exhausted and grinning, and thinking, this is real. This is actually real. I drove home and sat in my parking lot for 10 minutes just breathing. Then I called Nate and we both laughed. Long, exhausted, real laughter. I didn't call my parents. I already knew how it would go. When I was 28, my grandmother passed away. She left her little ranch house, 3 bedrooms, a big yard, hardwood floors she'd refinished herself 3 times, to my sister and me, jointly. She was honestly the only person in my family who had ever asked what I was building and actually waited for the full answer. After the funeral, my father said he'd handle the property management. "I was so busy with everything," he said. "I shouldn't have to worry." I said I actually had a property operations arm in my company. I could. "Iris," my mother said gently, "you've got enough on your plate." 2 months later, I had our operations team look into the property. One afternoon was all it took. The house was running on short-term rental platforms at $2,800 a month. Nobody had asked me. Nobody had mentioned it. I thought about calling and saying something. Then I did something else instead. I set up an LLC. I called it Halcyon Property Group. I quietly listed myself as the authorized property manager on the platform account. I absorbed the property into Halcyon's portfolio, waived the management fee, and made sure, for the first time since my grandmother's last healthy year, that the maintenance was actually being handled. My parents never noticed the difference. The money went into their account exactly as before. The house deserved to be taken care of. I told myself that and didn't examine it too closely. And I kept working. This past July, ClearGrid closed our Series B round, $22 million at a post-money valuation of $96 million. My personal equity stake came out to just under $42 million on paper. My liquid assets, the portions I'd taken off the table in earlier rounds, sat at a little over $34 million. I did not buy a new car. I did not buy a bigger apartment. I bought a better coffee machine and a very good mattress, and I went back to work. Nate wanted to celebrate. We got brisket at a barbecue place with picnic tables. It was perfect. I didn't call my parents. Thanksgiving this year was at my parents' house, same as always. The town looked exactly as it had on every other visit. A little smaller each time. The way your childhood bedroom shrinks as you get older. My father's hardware store was still open. That was something. I'd been watching it struggle for years against big box stores, the Amazon problem, the shrinking margins. 3 years ago, when things had gotten genuinely bad, when he told me at Christmas he might have to close, I had done something about it, quietly. Halcyon acquired the commercial building on Miller Street that the store occupied. Dad had been renting from an out-of-state landlord he'd never met. I dropped the rent by 22% and locked the rate for 5 years. My father mentioned it once around Easter, said the new management company had reached out with better lease terms. "Good landlord," he said. "Fair." I just said, "That's great, Dad." Dinner was fine. My sister looked beautiful, her fiancé Tanner beside her, filling in the edges of the table the way the sun fills a room. My mother floated around, touching things, adjusting, refilling glasses. My father said grace. I sat at my end and ate. "Your sister's thinking about converting Grandma's house," my mother told me over the sweet potatoes, "into a real home, for them after the baby." I looked up, Grandma's house. It makes sense, doesn't it? She smiled. Tanner's firm is opening an office up here. With the nursery coming, a 3-bedroom would be. That house belongs to both of us, I said, quietly. Of course, of course. Her smile didn't waver. That's something we wanted to talk about tonight, as a family. After dessert, after the pie which my mother served to my sister first, my father pushed back from his chair and set his hands flat on the table. His announcement posture. I'd been watching him do it my whole life. There's something your mother and I want to address, he said. A family matter. My sister was already looking at me. Careful expression. Preloaded sympathy. She already knew what was coming. She'd probably known for weeks. My father looked at me. Iris, your mother and I have been thinking about Grandma's property. With the baby coming and Tanner's situation up here, we think the sensible thing is to sign the house over fully. To your sister. I looked at him. She's starting a family, he said. His voice was the voice of a man who had already decided and just needed me to agree so everyone could move on. She has roots here. You're always on the move. Austin this, traveling that, always chasing the next thing. You wouldn't even use the house. It would just sit empty. And honestly, my mother added, leaning forward slightly, we worry about you, honey, not in a bad way. Just, you never seem to land anywhere. Your sister has built something real. A home, a life. My sister's voice came in small and careful. I don't want to make this awkward, Iris. You've always been the independent one. That's wonderful, that's you. But I could really use the stability right now. We've already spoken to the lawyer, my father said. Just a quitclaim deed. We'd need your signature. We think it's the right thing. For the family. My mother covered my hand with hers. Her rings were cold against my skin. We know you don't need it the way she does. You've always been so capable. You'll be fine. Independent. Capable. The words they used when they meant they didn't have to think about me. The table was quiet. Tanner was studying his plate. My sister was watching me with that careful expression, the one she'd prepared on the drive over. My father was waiting for me to nod. He was waiting for the version of me he had always known, the one who swallowed the unfair thing, because making peace was easier than making noise. I looked at my father, I looked at my mother, I looked at my sister. Okay, I said. My father blinked. Sorry? Okay, I said again. My voice was perfectly steady. My mother's hand tightened on mine. Are you sure you don't want to? I want to show you something first, I said. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my phone. No drama, no shaking. I opened the banking app, let my face scan in the soft light and turned the phone around. I set it on the table, next to the half-eaten pie. My father squinted at it. What is this? My brokerage account, I said. The liquid portion. He leaned forward, he read the number, he sat back. $34,200,000 and some change. My mother made a small sound, not a word, just air leaving her body. My sister's hand went flat on the table. That's not real, my father said slowly. Iris, where would that even? ClearGrid, I said. The clean energy company I started in Austin, the computer thing. We closed a Series B in July. The company is valued at $96 million. That's my liquid position. My equity is another $42 million on paper. My mother made the sound again. We have 41 employees, I said. We manage smart grid contracts in 9 states. I own my apartment. I owned 2 other properties in Austin. I have not touched a single dollar of anything from this family. The silence was total. Even the dog down the street had stopped barking. My sister's fiancé Tanner said nothing. His jaw was perfectly still. I tried to tell you, I said, not angry, just stating facts. When we won the regional competition, when we got our first round of funding, when we hired our 10th employee, I tried. You were busy. There was always something else. My mother's hand had fallen away from mine. She was pressing it to her own chest. You called it my computer thing, I said. For 11 years, you came to Austin once. You looked at my apartment and said it was spare. I paused. You were right. It was spare. I was pouring everything into the company. I was living on ramen noodles. I didn't take a salary for 2 years. You came to visit and told me I hadn't built a real life. Iris, my father said. I'm not finished, I said. He went quiet. Grandma's house, I said. You've been managing it, but the management platform it's listed on, the back-end property manager on that account, is Halcyon Property Group. Halcyon is a subsidiary of ClearGrid's operations arm. I set it up after the funeral because I didn't want the house to fall apart. I've handled all the maintenance, the tenant communications, the compliance. I've waived the management fee. Every dollar from those rentals has gone directly into your account, same as always. My mother whispered, "What?" "Check your bank statements. Look at the transfer origin. It says Halcyon Property Solutions, LLC. I looked at her steadily. That's me. My sister had gone completely still. And Dad. I turned to him. His face had gone a particular shade of gray. Your rent? The building on Miller Street. You told me 3 years ago the new management company gave you better lease terms. You said they were good landlords. He stared at me. Halcyon acquired that property in January of 2022, I said. I dropped your rent 22% and locked the rate for 5 years. I did it because you told me at Christmas you were thinking about closing the store. I didn't want that to happen. My father opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I did it quietly, I said, because I knew if I told you, you'd argue. You'd say you didn't need my help. You'd say you didn't want charity from the daughter who worked with computers. I looked at him. I have been subsidizing the survival of that store for 3 years, while you told me I hadn't built a real life. My mother started to cry, not polite tears. The raw, ugly kind she covered with her napkin and couldn't quite stop. My father looked like a man who had walked into a room and found all the furniture on the ceiling. He kept looking at the phone on this table, and then at me, and back at the phone. I don't, he stopped, pressed his fingers to his mouth, then quietly, Why? Because you're my parents, I said. And because the store is part of this town, and this town is part of you, and I didn't want to watch it close. I took a breath. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it, and I kept working, and I stopped waiting for you to see it. My sister reached across the table toward my hand. Her nails were perfect. She stopped just short of touching me. Iris, she said. Her voice was cracked. I didn't know, I promise I didn't know any of this. I know, I said, and I believed her. You're not the villain here. You're just the one they paid attention to. That's not the same thing. She pulled her hand back slowly. Her eyes were wet. You said I hadn't settled, I said, looking at my father. You said I was always chasing the next thing. You said your sister has built something real. I straightened slightly in my chair. I have built something real. I built it in a 1-bedroom apartment with a folding table for a desk and a couch I got off the internet for $80. I built it while you were here praising her raise and asking me when I was going to find a nice man and settle down. I built it while you told people it was my computer thing. My father's voice when it came was barely above a murmur. I'm proud of you. I should have said it before. I don't know why I never. Because you didn't know me, I said. Not cruelly. Just honestly. You had an idea of who I was and you stopped looking past it. That's not who I am. I stood up. Iris, please. My mother's voice was desperate. Don't leave. We can talk. We can fix this. I'm not leaving angry, I said. And I meant it. The anger had burned away somewhere between the sweet potatoes and the pie. What was left was something cleaner and more final. I'm leaving because I think we all need some space, and because I have a 6 a.m. board call and I need to sleep. My father got up partway from his chair. The rent, the store. Iris, let us pay you back, let us. Finish the lease, I said. Then we'll figure it out. I picked up my jacket. The house. I'll sign the quitclaim deed. File whatever you need to file. I looked at my sister. It was always just a house. What I've built doesn't fit in a 3-bedroom ranch. I said goodnight. I walked through the living room, past the ceramic turkey and the tablecloth nobody had replaced, and I opened the front door. The November air hit my face, cold and absolutely clean. I sat in my rental car in the driveway for a while. I didn't cry. I didn't feel like crying. I felt like someone who had just set down a bag she'd been carrying, so long she'd stopped noticing the weight. My phone lit up. A text from my mother. Please come back, please. I had no idea. I'm sorry, Iris. I really am. Then one from my father, arriving quietly in the dark. I'm proud of you. I should have said it 1,000 times before now. I'm sorry. I read all of them. I put the phone face down on the seat. Then my work phone rang. Nate, I said. Iris. His voice was electric, the way it got when something had gone exactly right. The Department of Energy pilot program. They just confirmed. We're in. Official letter in the morning. 37 states. I leaned my head back against the headrest and closed my eyes. That's incredible, I said, and then I laughed, a real one. The kind that comes up from somewhere deep and has no self-consciousness about it at all. That's genuinely incredible. Tell the team tonight. Don't wait until morning. Already texting them, he said. I hung up. I started the car. I drove to the hotel by the airport, the one I always booked when I came home, because I had learned years ago to always have somewhere that was mine. I went up to my room. I poured a glass of water from the tap. I stood at the window and looked out at the town. The quiet streets, the hardware store dark now, the church on the corner with the neon sign my grandmother used to love. My family was in that house right now, probably still at the table, probably not talking. I thought about my father's face when he'd read the number on my phone. I thought about my mother's tears. I thought about my sister's hand, reaching and stopping. I waited to feel triumphant. I didn't exactly. What I felt was more honest than that. It was the feeling of having finally shown a room full of people a picture you'd been carrying in your pocket for a decade. Not to wound them, but because you needed them to finally know what they had been looking away from all this time. My work phone lit up on the nightstand, a text from Nate to the whole team. 37 states. We did it. Drinks on Iris. I typed back. We did it. I put the phone down. I stood at the window a little longer. 37 states. 41 people who had believed in something I'd started on a folding table, in a spare apartment they would have called too small. A company built out of years of rice and beans and 6-hour nights and every single phone call that went unanswered. None of it had come from the table I'd been seated at my whole life. I had built my own.